It's the year 44 of the Second Epoch on the freezing Aukash frontline. The sky is swarming with level 125 soul-binding gargoyles, the vanguard of the Madeira Legion. Adding to the nightmare, a level 150 Everfrost bone dragon emerges from the clouds, radiating an aura of absolute zero. Su Fei stands at the head of the Divine Might Guild's defensive line, staring down the massive skeletal beast as it looms over his men. His guild's support units are working overtime, channeling light and void spells to keep the formation from crumbling under the pressure. One of the frontline fighters gets cocky, diving into the swarm and claiming the Madeira necromancers as his personal kills. Su Fei leads the charge with a deafening war cry, his cape snapping in the wind as he slams into the first wave of undead. He swings his massive blade in a powerful arc, shattering a skeleton soldier's skull and sending bone fragments flying. The force of his strike ripples outward, obliterating an entire squad of skeletons in a single explosive burst. His men are in awe, watching their vice guildmaster fight like a god of war incarnate as he carves through the enemy ranks. One of the soldiers notes that this desolate battlefield used to be Su Fei's actual starter village back in the early days of the game. The Madeira army is an endless sea of bone and shadow, with reinforcements constantly emerging from the dark horizon. A Madeira necromancer raises his staff, chanting ancient words of power to fuel the undead assault. The Everfrost bone dragon lets out a silent roar and unleashes a torrent of icy breath that freezes everything in its path. The freezing blast slams into the guild's positions, leaving the survivors screaming for help amidst the icy debris. Su Fei immediately orders his dragon hunter crossbowmen to focus their fire, aiming directly at the beast's massive core. A volley of enchanted bolts streaks through the air, trailing light as they home in on the winged monster. The shots connect with pinpoint accuracy, erupting in flashes of energy that shatter the dragon's wings and torso. Su Fei launches himself high into the air, telling the filthy reptile to crawl back to hell as he raises his sword for the final blow. He delivers a crushing strike to the dragon's head, his blade wreathed in golden light as it shears through bone and magic. He lands gracefully on the shattered earth, while the massive dragon begins its final, heavy descent behind him. The Everfrost bone dragon crashes into the ground with an earth-shaking thud, signaling its end. The guild members erupt in cheers, praising Su Fei for his incredible kill as the dust settles around them. His soldiers declare the Divine Might Guild invincible, buoyed by the sight of their leader standing triumphant. Su Fei just laughs it off, telling them they better start calling him Guildmaster once this battle is officially won. His triumphant look fades as he catches a glimpse of something moving through the smoke on the horizon. A dark cavalry unit appears, their black armor almost blending into the stormy sky as they charge toward the guild. They're level 140 Ebon Ash Knights, the heavy hitters of the Madeira Legion, and they've arrived in force. Su Fei realizes with horror that the Thornflower Fire Guild has completely abandoned their sector, leaving his flank wide open. He orders his men not to panic, telling them to follow him and aim for an opening at the 8 o'clock position. It's too late. A knight's spear punches through one of his soldiers, lifting the man right off his feet before he can react. Blood sprays across the battlefield as the knight retracts the weapon, leaving a fatal trail behind. In a flash of dark movement, Su Fei is caught by a devastating Oblivion strike, a spear punching right through his chest. He looks up to see a level 200 Oblivion knight towering over him, a foe far beyond his current level. Su Fei's vision starts to dim as the world turns a dark shade of red, but his eye remains fixed on the enemy with pure defiance. He thinks about how close they were to finishing the world quest and restoring the kingdom, only to be undone by a single betrayal. A system window flashes before his eyes, warning him of massive blood loss and critical health status. His strength fails him, and his ornate sword slips from his numbing fingers, falling into the blood-soaked dirt. The final system warning appears, indicating total cardiopulmonary failure as his vital signs flatline. His last thought is one of pure spite, planning to put the traitors from Thornflower Fire on blast the second he logs off. As his consciousness fades and death looms over him, He wonders why the hell the system hasn't logged him out yet. Suddenly, his eye snaps open, glowing with a new sense of life as he wakes up in a place he never expected to see again. He's panting, sweat dripping down his face as he realizes he's actually still alive. The expected forced disconnection from the game never happened, leaving him staring right into the empty sockets of a skeleton. Su-fei takes a shaky breath, nodding that necromancers never leave survivors. He figures his luck isn't completely trash if he's still drawing breath after that assault. He looks at the shattered Madeira skeleton soldier on the floor, confused by why the enemy would summon such low-level, trash mobs. It's already year 44 of the second epoch, and these things shouldn't be a threat to anyone. He looks down at his torso and freezes. He remembers being stabbed in the chest, but the wound is on his stomach. Even worse, the gash is glowing with a sickly green light from corpse poison. He can't believe he got hit with a bottom-tier debuff like that. With his silver-tier physique, a low-level status effect shouldn't have even registered, let alone be causing this much pain. He grips his head, thinking about the massive wipe the Temple of Fire, Guild just suffered, and how the game forums are going to be in absolute chaos. He reaches out to open his inventory, but nothing happens. He realizes he's been completely stripped of his high-level gear and items by what he thinks are undead bandits. They didn't even leave him a single bandage to stop the bleeding from his stomach. He stumbles through the stone hallway, noticing the distinct lack of a battlefield. If he didn't log off, he should still be on the Akash frontline, but this place looks nothing like a war zone. Su-fei looks around the room with growing suspicion, his brow furrowed as he takes in the details of the stone masonry. He recognizes the architectural style immediately. This is the southern kingdom of Iruin. But that makes no sense, because the kingdom fell years ago during the Third War of the Black Rose. He leans against the wall, clutching his stomach as the intense pain continues to flare. He definitely didn't install a pain mod, so he wonders if the developers rolled out a secret experimental patch while he was dying. He decides he needs to get out of the building and find a teleport waypoint. If he can just get back to a main city and grab his backup gear, he might still be able to save his guildmates at the front. He reaches a large window and looks out into the night, hoping to see something familiar. Instead of a war-torn wasteland, he sees a quiet, peaceful village nestled in the hills. There's no sign of the undead anywhere, and he realizes with a jolt that he isn't anywhere near the Akash frontline. He stares at a map of the region, identifying the location as the village of Bucks. It's a classic starter zone in the kingdom of Iruin, miles away from where the high-level conflict should be. He stares at the village, his mind racing as he recalls how Aeon was eventually turned into a nest for the Madeira necromancers. Seeing it like this, untouched and peaceful, feels like a hallucination. A system message clarifies the situation, stating that it's currently year 375 of the first epoch. This is the year of blossoms and summer leaves, long before the catastrophic wars that defined his life. He stares at the map as it seems to bleed red, his eyes wide with shock. It's impossible for him to be back in this time period, decades before he even started playing. He realizes this is the exact year the First War of the Black Rose is supposed to begin. Once the Madeira necromancers make their move, the entire continent will be plunged into a series of endless wars. He collapses to the floor, clutching his head as two conflicting sets of memories begin to merge. If he's in the past, in this body, he has to wonder who he actually is now. A voice echoes in his mind, confirming the impossible. He is Su-fei, but he is also Brando. A close-up of his eye shows a golden iris, a mark of the soul he now carries. A vision of the past flashes before him, showing a young boy walking with his mother, a fallen noblewoman. People in the village whisper about her noble roots and her stern grandfather. In another memory, young Brando sits with his grandfather, a veteran soldier with silver hair. He asks the old man how many enemies he killed back in the day, his eyes full of wonder. Brando's grandfather looks at a war medal in his palm, his expression distant. He says he doesn't remember the kills, only that he saved at least 5 of his comrades. Inspired, young Brando trains relentlessly with a wooden sword in the courtyard. He vows to become the #1 swordsman in the entire kingdom of Iruin. The memory shifts to the present, where Brando is desperately fending off a Madeira skeleton soldier. He swings a real blade now, shouting his resolve to restore his family's fallen glory. He lunges at the skeleton, calling it a filthy undead, and demanding to know who gave it permission to enter his home. His confidence shatters when his sword techniques fail to connect, and the skeleton's rusted blade slashes across his midsection. He's shocked that his skill isn't enough to overcome a simple trash mob. Despite the wound, he grabs the skeleton's head, his face contorted as he screams that they're going to hell together. In a mental space, Su Fei watches the scene, asking why Brando is pushing himself so hard. Brando's spirit answers that the necromancers destroyed his second home, and he's going to make them pay for it. The scene shifts back to Su Fei's memories of a grand council room. He's standing before a guild table, requesting 2 main raid groups to hold the front line against the undead. He explains his plan to the other leaders, mentioning that the Thornflower Fire Guild has already agreed to hold the right flank. He's confident that with the entire army mobilized, they can win the battle at Aukash. The memory turns bitter as it shows Su Fei dying on that very battlefield, surrounded by his retreating men. He tells them to leave him behind and get out of there while they still can. Back in the present, Su Fei and Brando stand back to back in a column of light. The system voice repeats that they are now one and the same: Su Fei, the veteran player, and Brando, the determined noble. A split-face image shows the 2 identities merged into one. He declares his dual identity, accepting the mantle of both lives. Brando sits alone in the dark stone room, the moonlight streaming through the arched windows. He finds the whole situation absurd, having never expected that a simple game would result in a full transmigration. He looks down at his hand and his wounded stomach, frustrated by how incredibly weak this new body is. He almost died to a single skeleton, a far cry from the #1 swordsman Brando claimed to be. He leans back against the wall, thinking about how fate loves to play tricks by giving him hope, and then immediately snatching it away. He forces himself to stand up, deciding that since he's here, he might as well accept it. He figures that even if he fails a second time, it won't matter much in the grand scheme of things. He pauses as a sudden realization hits him, his eyes wide as he looks toward the window. He calculates the dates, comparing his previous knowledge to the current year. He realizes that the kingdom of Aruan is destined to fall in this exact year of blossoms and summer leaves. But since none of it has happened yet, he has a chance to change everything. A close-up of Su Fei's face reveals his intense focus as he realizes his unique advantage. Knowing the future gives him a chance to save the kingdom of Aruan from its tragic fate. He stands tall, the moonlight catching his features as he makes a silent vow. This time he won't let Aruan fall. He will be the savior this world needs. Looking around the ransacked room, his eyes land on a discarded blade lying in a patch of moonlight. He picks up the weapon, nodding it's just a common tier white longsword. While it's basic starter gear, it will have to suffice for the fight ahead. Su Fei grips the hilt, scanning the shadows for any more Madeira scouts. He knows he can't fight effectively until he stops the bleeding from his stomach wound. He moves cautiously across the floor, his boots making soft sounds against the wooden planks. He pauses in front of a slashed oil painting, wondering if the undead were looking for something specific. Their destruction seems too focused to be random. He examines the frame and discovers a hidden compartment behind the canvas. He realizes this might be the legendary Buck's painting from the game's lore. With a quick pull, he tears through the backing, and a metallic object clatters to the floor. He picks up a silver ring adorned with sharp, wing-like protrusions. It's the Ring of the Wind Empress, a powerful quest reward he remembers from the game's earliest version. He stares at the artifact, amazed to find such a god-tier starter item hidden here. He knows later patches removed this quest, making its location a secret only a veteran player like him would know. An interface window appears in his mind, detailing the ring's properties. A boost to dexterity and the wind bullet skill, which can store up to 3 charges. He marvels at the ring's power, knowing it can deal 100 points of flat area of effect damage while ignoring defense. He wonders how his grandfather ever came to possess such a holy relic. Without hesitation, he slides the silver band onto his finger, ready to utilize its magical properties. A sudden surge of green energy and crackling lightning erupts from the ring, enveloping his arm as the item binds to him. A confident smile touches his lips as he feels the power boost. If he had this item in his past life, he could have easily dominated the server's rankings. His moment of triumph is cut short as a heavy clatter echoes from the hallway. He spins around, raising his sword as he demands to know who's there. He stares into the pitch-black doorway, where two glowing pinpricks of light watch him from the darkness. Heavy, armored footsteps thud against the floor as a new threat approaches. A Madara skeleton soldier draped in heavy plate armor steps into the room, a sinister purple aura radiating from its bones. Su Fei quickly ducks behind a stone pillar, watching the undead warrior pass by. He notes that its detection range is exactly 5 yards, just like the low-level mobs in the game. The skeletal soldier continues its search, unaware that its prey is hiding only a few feet away. Based on the sounds of clanking armor, he realizes there isn't just one, but 2 skeletal soldiers patrolling the area. Sweat beads on his forehead as he realizes the danger. In his previous life, he could have crushed these enemies with one hand, but his current body is too weak for a direct confrontation. He peeks from behind his cover, spotting the second skeleton. He recalls that the healing bandages should be kept in this specific room and starts formulating a plan. He reaches down and picks up a jagged piece of wood from a broken crate. He hurls the wood into the center of the room, the loud crash echoing off the stone walls. The 2 skeletons immediately turn toward the source of the noise, their dim-witted AI leading them straight into his trap. He scoffs at how their behavior is identical to the game's NPCs. He watches from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make his move. He needs to lure them further away from the supplies. He throws another piece of debris toward the hallway, the sound drawing the armored skeletons away from the room's entrance. The 2 Madara soldiers, eyes glowing red with mindless aggression, rush out of the room to investigate the new disturbance. Once they have passed his hiding spot, Su Fei prepares to make a dash for the interior of the room. He slips inside, clutching his side as the pain from the wound flares up again. He enters a cluttered study, the floor covered in papers and overturned furniture. He pauses for a moment as he sees a formal portrait of his grandfather on the wall. He remembers the old man was a decorated veteran of the November War. He begins frantically searching through the shelves, knowing he only has moments before his health drops to a critical level. He throws open a small wooden chest on the floor and finds exactly what he was looking for, a fresh roll of linen bandages. He quickly begins wrapping the cloth around his waist, using his teeth to hold one end as he pulls the dressing tight. He laments the lack of a healing potion, but he knows they were prohibitively expensive during this era of the game's history. He recalls a memory of his former life, standing at an alchemist's counter and realizing that player-crafted potions were the only way to make the prices affordable. As the bandages are secured, a soft green glow emanates from his wound. He feels a small surge of vitality as the basic first aid skill begins to take effect. With his immediate survival secured, he reaches out into the air, trying to summon his character's status interface to assess his new stats. Su Fei watches as a glowing blue window materializes in front of him, the ornate border shimmering with digital particles. The screen displays his character information, identifying him as Brendel, a level 1 human male with 0 experience points. He lets out a breath of relief, a wide smile spreading across his face at the sight of the interface. The confirmation that the game's core systems still function in this world gives him the confidence he needs to survive the coming war. The character window lists his current status in detail, showing a weakened health bar and a set of fledgling attributes. He scans through his modest skills in military swordsmanship and basic combat, knowing exactly what he needs to improve to face the Madara army. Su Fei Brando, a young man with messy black hair and amber eyes, smiles as he realizes he's still alive and somehow inside the game world. He looks at his reflection in a piece of polished armor, relieved to have escaped death. His expression shifts to concern as a blue system screen reveals his current status. Starting as a level 1 militia member is a massive step down from the high-level guildmaster he used to be. He scrolls through the data and realizes his strength is a measly 1 point. Even the most basic skeleton fodder in this world starts with more power than that. Every player usually begins with a hero template that starts with 2 strength. Being stuck with a weak NPC template like this means he's effectively playing on hell mode. Su-Fei rests his chin on his hand, already planning his next move. He needs to find a way out of here and deliver intelligence about the invasion to the Butcha security guard. He moves cautiously through the dark halls of the stone mansion, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. Moonlight streams through the arches, highlighting the long shadows cast across the floor. He stops at a window, his eyes narrowing as he looks out into the courtyard. Something moving in the darkness below catches his attention. He leans against the window frame, peering down at the shadows. He wonders if those are the necromancers he needs to avoid. From his vantage point, he spots a Madara necromancer, a hooded skeletal figure in black robes, leading a group of undead. He begins counting the enemies patrolling the grounds one by one. He counts 3 full squads of skeletons and 3 necromancers. There's no doubt about it. Madara's regular army is here, and the war has officially begun. Su-Fei watches from behind the bars of the window as an army of Madara skeleton soldiers in rusted armor marches through the trees. He estimates there are over 100 enemies surrounding the estate. A necromancer raises a glowing staff, its skeletal jaw hanging open in a silent command. The undead forces are clearly being coordinated by a powerful master. Su-Fei realizes he's looking at elite monsters that his current body can't handle. Only the village guards stand a chance against a force this large. Below the window, 2 cloaked figures confer near a group of skeletons. One scolds the other for forgetting to bring out a specific corpse mentioned in their intelligence. The lead necromancer pauses, its hollow hood turning toward the house as it senses a living presence. It begins to suspect that someone is still alive inside the mansion. The undead master looks directly up toward the window where Su-Fei was just standing. It gestures toward the building, signaling its minions to investigate. Su-Fei quickly ducks back against the wall, his heart racing. He almost forgot about the level suppression system that gives high-level enemies a massive perception bonus. Outside, the necromancer orders its subordinates to search the area carefully. It fears their secret plan might have already been discovered. A sea of red eyes glows in the dark as the skeletons begin their sweep of the grounds. Red energy pulses from the necromancer's staves, illuminating the surrounding forest. Su-Fei looks back at the staircase, realizing the front courtyard is completely blocked. His only hope for survival is to find an exit through the back door. He enters a laboratory, but stops dead as several skeletons emerge from the shadows. They've already managed to infiltrate the house while he was unconscious. He grits his teeth, cursing his bad luck as the undead soldiers raise their rusted blades. He's trapped in a narrow room with no way to retreat. The skeletons lunge forward, their red eyes fixed on their target. A necromancer's staff glows blue in the background as the group closes in on him. Su-Fei stands his ground and activates the ring of the Wind Empress. A blue aura of swirling wind begins to gather around his arm as he shouts the activation command. He thrusts his hand forward, releasing a violent explosion of wind magic. His eyes glow with the same blue intensity as the swirling storm. The massive whirlwind rips through the room, lifting the skeletons off their feet and smashing them against the stone walls. They are instantly shredded into fragments of bone and rusted metal. The stone ceiling cracks under the pressure of the gale as debris flies everywhere. The entire room is engulfed in a chaotic storm of blue energy. Su-Fei looks on in disbelief as experience point notifications pop up in the air. The damage output is significantly higher than anything he remembers from the game version of this item. He checks his ring and is stunned to see a 6-hour cooldown timer on the system display. In the game, this powerful ability only had a 10-minute recharge. Outside, the force of the wind blast shatters the windows and sends a massive plume of dust into the night air. The necromancers and their skeleton squads stop to witness the destruction. One of the necromancers creates a swirling ring of fire with its staff, looking toward the source of the blast. The undead army is now fully alerted to Su-Fei's presence. A superior necromancer grabs the other's arm, warning them not to use fire and risk attracting the human army. They need to capture the survivor alive to keep their invasion a secret. The lead necromancer points toward the house, ordering the skeletons to move in. They charge toward the breached wall with their swords drawn. Su Fei sprints through the corridors as more skeletons climb through the windows behind him. He realizes this encounter has escalated into the difficulty of a high-level dungeon run. He rounds a corner and finds another group of skeletons waiting for him. He brandishes his sword, but knows he can't win a direct physical fight with his current stats. He kicks a door open and ducks into another room, desperate to find a defensible position. He decides to head for the kitchen. Skeletons hack at the wooden door with their blades, the tips of their swords piercing through the wood. Su Fei leans his weight against the frame, trying to hold them back. He manages to slip through and close the next door, gasping for air. He knows he almost didn't make it that time. He quickly moves a heavy cabinet across the floor to block the entrance. The skeletons on the other side continue to batter the wood, their swords splintering the door. Su Fei stands in the middle of the kitchen, his mind racing through his knowledge of history. In the original timeline, the Butcha security guards failed to stop the invasion because they misjudged Madara's strategy. He looks around the dark room, thinking about how the guards originally detected the invasion. He wonders if his presence here is the reason they were alerted in the first place. He makes a sudden decision and realizes what he needs to do. If he can't leave a message, he'll use fire to create a signal that no one in the village can ignore. A Madara necromancer shouts at the Madara skeleton soldiers to stop wasting time and just tear down the door. He's losing his patience with the slow progress of his undead grunts. Flames erupt from behind the door as the undead forces surround the entrance. The necromancers stand back, waiting for the path to be cleared so they can finish the job. A necromancer screams orders to send a squad around the back of the building immediately. They cannot allow the boy inside to find a way to escape through a hidden exit. Inside the burning kitchen, Su Fei, Brendel, holds a cloth over his mouth to filter out the thick black smoke. He offers a silent apology to the original Brando, knowing this family home must be sacrificed for the sake of the kingdom. He watches the flames roar outside the window, hoping his desperate gamble works. Everything now depends on the Butcha guard noticing the massive signal fire. Back in the village, a security guard tries to keep a frantic young woman back. Roma won't be stopped and pushes past him toward the command center to find help. Roma, a young woman in a white blouse and red necktie, marches across the courtyard with a look of pure urgency. She demands the guards go save the people at the estate before the fire spreads any further. 3 figures emerge from the building to address the commotion: Captain Ma, the blonde knight unnamed, and another guard. They turn their collective attention to the distant glow on the horizon. Roma pleads with the captain to hurry and send a team to put out the blaze. She's terrified that her aunt will never forgive her if the fire reaches the neighboring houses. Captain Ma, a stern man with spiky silver hair and a goatee, listens to the report. He nods and gives the order to send his men to the scene immediately. A massive plume of fire and black smoke billows into the night sky, visible from every corner of the village. Captain Ma watches the destruction, commenting that the brat certainly knows how to cause a scene. The blonde knight unnamed analyzes the situation, pointing out that the sequence of explosions suggests a deliberate enemy attack. Captain Ma finds it hard to believe, remembering the kid as someone far too quiet for this kind of chaos. Realizing the gravity of the threat, Captain Ma raises his hand and orders a second-level combat alert. He commands his forces to move out toward the estate to uncover the source of the madness. Buck's Manor is a beacon of fire against the dark night sky. Thick black smoke pillars into the atmosphere, marking the beginning of the end for the village. Skeletal soldiers gather before the burning gates. The inferno rages behind them, casting a hellish glow over their bleached bones and rusted gear. A hooded Madara necromancer stands amidst his undead thralls, his voice dripping with venom as he threatens them. One skeleton trembles, admitting their natural fear of the holy flames. The necromancer bellows an order, his fangs bared in a snarl. He demands they charge in and drag out the bug inside, dead or alive. He calculates the risk, realizing the commotion might force an early full-scale attack. The fear of his superior, Sir Insteron, is clear as he takes full responsibility for the mess. Dozens of skeletons surge forward into the heat. Their swords are drawn, ready to cut down anyone caught in the manor's halls. A window shatters as Brando leaps through the frame. Wood splinters fly everywhere as he hurls himself into the night. He hits the ground and breaks into a sprint, leaving the burning building behind. Behind him, a squad of skeletons crowds the window he just escaped from. Brando grinds his teeth as the pain from his stomach wound flares up. The realism of this world is a far cry from any game he ever played. He runs through the courtyard, his mind racing with game lore. He knows Old Man Madden and the guard squad will soon mobilize to buy the villagers time. Every path seems blocked as the undead swarm bucks and its outskirts. The sheer scale of the Madara invasion is starting to settle in. He looks back toward the chaos, sweat dripping down his face. If he doesn't relay the Madara army's true intentions to the guards, the Aoyuan kingdom won't stand a chance. He rounds a corner only to find 4 skeletons blocking his path. Their armor is heavier than the others, and they stand ready for a fight. Brando's heart sinks as he realizes the town is crawling with these lapdogs. He's trapped in a tight alley with no easy way out. He observes their movements, identifying them as level 3 skeleton warriors. They're significantly stronger than the common fodder he's faced so far. More skeletons emerge from the shadows behind him, cutting off his escape. He scoffs at the overkill of using flanking tactics on a single militia member like himself. He acknowledges the tactical competence of Madara's junior officers. It's no wonder they eventually become a threat to the entire continent. Brando charges forward, his sword held low. He needs to end this quickly before he gets completely pinned down and overwhelmed. Steel clashes against steel as he parries a skeleton's downward strike. The force of the blow vibrates through his arm, testing his limited strength. He executes a spinning slash through the center of the group, his blade tracing a lethal arc. Sparks fly as he strikes multiple skeletons at once, keeping them at bay. He retreats a step, gasping for air as the reality of his situation sinks in. He momentarily forgot he has the weak stats of a commoner NPC, not a heroic player. It suddenly hit him that he was just a newbie, and there was still a mountain of system features he hadn't even touched yet. He focuses his gaze, a glint of hope returning to his eyes. He mentally commands his status window to open before the skeletons can recover. The blue holographic screen flickers into existence, displaying his pathetic level 1 stats. He knows this first level up is his only chance to turn his fate around. He scans the information, seeing the prompt that he can finally level up his profession. It's the breakthrough he desperately needs to survive the next few minutes. His finger hovers over the screen, selecting the militia profession. The system processes the choice, and his stats begin to climb. A surge of power began flooding his body as the interface glowed with intense energy. The skeletons didn't hesitate. They immediately swarmed their prey. A new window appears, offering 3 random talent draws exactly like the game. It's the ultimate gamble, as drawing talents in the Amber Sword is completely randomized. He taps the button, silently praying for something that can grant him invincibility. He knows a god-tier talent can make even a trash class dominate. The UI pulses with golden energy as the talent draw begins. Everything hinges on what the system grants him right now. The first result pops up, Eagle Eye. It's a great talent for increasing vision and finding fatal weaknesses, but it's designed for ranged combat. Brando's face twitches with annoyance as sweat beads on his brow. As a melee fighter, a scouting talent is the last thing he needs in a close-quarters brawl. The second draw reveals Meditation, which boosts mana recovery. It's completely useless to him since he doesn't know a single spell. On the final draw, the screen flashes with a golden brilliance as Unyielding appears. It's a top-tier legendary talent for melee classes. A wide grin spreads across Brando's face as he realizes his luck has finally turned. He's just secured the absolute best skill for a melee class. A skeleton warrior lunges, its blade cutting through the air with a sharp whistle. He is too slow to react while distracted by the system message. The rusted sword pierces straight through his shoulder, sending a spray of blood into the air. He screams in agony as the cold steel bites deep into his flesh. He collapses to one knee, the skeleton warrior towering over him with its sword still buried in his shoulder. His vision blurs as the life starts to drain out of him. With a final, desperate surge of will, he shouts for the activation of his new talent skill, Unyielding. It's now or never. A torrent of blue spectral energy explodes from Brando, throwing the skeletons back. His eyes glow with a fierce, ethereal light as the skill takes hold. The skeleton warrior freezes, its glowing red eyes fixed on the transformed man. It mutters in a gravelly voice that he is now one of them. Wrapped in a soul cloak of shimmering blue wind, Brando stands tall. The skeleton soldier stops its attack, completely fooled by the effect of the unyielding talent. Brando feels the surge of power from his unyielding talent. The blue energy coursing through him makes him look like a phantom, confusing the skeletons nearby. He doesn't waste the opening, lunging forward with his blade. A blue shockwave follows his swing, cutting through the nearest undead with ease. Blood drips from Brando's mouth as he grits his teeth against the searing pain. He knows he only has a small window to strike back before the injuries become fatal. The system window displays the brutal conditions of his new talent. As long as he isn't decapitated or bisected, he's effectively immortal for the next 30 minutes. He carves his way through the alley, leaving a pile of bones in his wake. Only one skeleton remains standing, its movements hesitant as it struggles to recognize its prey. Steel clashes as Brando parries the final guard's blade. He wonders if the commotion has already alerted the necromancer controlling this sector. Farther back, the hooded Madara necromancer raises his staff, its tip glowing with a jagged red energy. He shrieks a command to his minions in a guttural tongue. The skeletons respond to the forced attack command, their eyes glowing red with murderous intent. Brando watches the horde surge toward him, wondering if this is where his journey ends. A thunderous shout echoes through the street as a man on horseback leaps into the fray. Captain Madden leads the charge, his sword drawn and ready to crush the undead. Behind him, Freya and the rest of the guard squad gallop through the darkness. Their horses trample the skeletal warriors, shattering bone beneath heavy hooves. The cavalry charge breaks the undead encirclement in a single, violent stroke. Knights in silver armor strike down the confused skeletons with practiced precision. Captain Madden pulls his horse to a halt beside Brando, shocked to see the boy still standing. Brando doesn't waste time on pleasantries, warning him that this is a full-scale invasion. The veteran's face pales as he processes the news. Brando explains that the entire Aeon kingdom is the target, not just their small village. Captain Madden reacts instantly, barking orders to his subordinates. He sends 2 riders to warn the capital while the rest prepare to hold the manor at all costs. Suddenly, the world turns into a cold, blue negative for Brando. His body locks up, a terrifying side effect of the unyielding talent reaching its limit. His vision blurs as he collapses, the sudden loss of strength leaving him helpless. The toll of fighting past his mortal limits has finally caught up. Captain Madden catches Brando by the collar before he can hit the pavement. He shouts for the boy to hang in there, his voice filled with concern. Nearby, Freya's blade flashes through the air, decapitating a skeleton in one smooth motion. She hears the captain's call and turns her horse toward them. Freya reins in her mount, her expression sharp and alert. She looks back at the chaos, her braid whipping in the wind as she awaits further instructions. She leans down and pulls the unconscious Brando onto her horse. The blood on his chest plate stands out starkly against his pale skin. Captain Madden looks at the wounded boy, realizing the intelligence he carries could save thousands of lives. He orders Freya to lead the 3rd squad and escort Brando to the rear fortress. Freya cradles the boy in her arms, her face reflecting her inner turmoil. She protests, wanting to stay and fight by her captain's side. Captain Madden cuts her off with a sharp glare, reminding her that this isn't a request, it's an order. He knows someone has to stay behind to hold the line. The veteran knight turns his horse toward the massive wall of skeletons. He tells Freya to leave the rear to his old bones and ride for their lives. Tears prick the corners of Freya's eyes as she watches her mentor prepare for a suicide mission. She grits her teeth, forcing herself to obey. She raises her sword and rallies the 3rd squad, ordering them to break through the enemy lines. Her horse rears up, ready to charge into the forest. The knights gallop away from the manor, their silver armor glinting under the moonlight. Behind them, the roar of battle continues as Madden meets the horde head-on. Freya slashes through anything that gets in her way, her movements fueled by a mix of grief and duty. She knows she can't look back if they want to survive. Captain Madden's horse kicks out, crushing a skeleton's ribcage with a sickening crunch. The veteran is a whirlwind of destruction, refusing to let a single monster pass. He punches another skeleton so hard its skull shatters into a dozen pieces. His battle cry echoes through the burning manor as he unleashes decades of combat experience. His blade carves through the undead like a hot knife through wax. He mocks the Madeira bastards for underestimating a veteran who survived the November War. One of his soldiers stands back to back with him, joking about getting married once the battle is over. Madden scoffs at the man for raising such an obvious death flag. Madden's thoughts drift to an old friend he hasn't seen in years. He knows that tonight, he'll finally be joining them in the afterlife. With a final, thunderous command, he leads his remaining men into the thick of the enemy. They charge with no hope of victory, only the intent to die a hero's death. Hours later, a single supply carriage rattles through a quiet forest road. The sounds of the manor battle are now just a distant, haunting memory. Brendel lies in the back of the wagon, his breathing shallow and uneven. He's covered in bandages, his face pale from blood loss. He suddenly gasps and sits up, his eyes wide with confusion. Sweat pours down his face as he tries to remember how he ended up here. A woman named Roma bursts into tears of joy when she sees him wake up. She's been watching over him the entire time, fearing the worst. Roma leans over him, her eyes red and puffy from crying. In the distance, Freya can be seen leading the convoy from horseback, her back straight and determined. Brando clutches his bandaged chest, the phantom pain still echoing in his mind. He notes that the physical sensation is far more intense than any virtual reality game could ever simulate. He calls up his status window, scanning the lines of blue text. His health is still critical, but he's managed to survive the initial invasion. He notices a hidden ability within his talent called Die Hard that is slowly mending his wounds. It seems his desperate gamble at the manor has given him a second chance at life. Freya on horseback raises her hand and signals the survivors of the Bucks militia to halt and regroup by the riverbank. Roma supports a bandaged Brando as he struggles to walk. She begs him to rest, but he stubbornly insists he is fine. Freya hops off her horse and confronts Brando, her expression stern as she orders him to lie back down. Brando's eyes narrow as he notices the ornate crest on her armor, recognizing it as the emblem of the Temple of Fire. Brando looks up at the warrior woman, his face smudged with dirt and blood. She introduces herself as Freya, the captain of the 3rd Militia Squad, and reiterates her command for him to rest. Brando's mind pieces together the fragments of his knowledge. Freya, the Temple of Fire, the blonde hair, realizing exactly who stands before him. He stares at her in awe, his internal monologue revealing that he has just met the future goddess of war. Brando shocks Freya by reciting her full lineage, calling her the daughter of the great knight Everton. She stammers in confusion, claiming her father is just a town carpenter. Nearby, Markme and another soldier laugh, teasing their boss about the smooth talker and his impressive pickup lines. Freya's face turns beet red as she threatens to shut her men up personally if they say another word. Brando watches the exchange with a calculated gaze, nodding that the squad consists of only 7 or 8 people. The exhausted militiamen gather by the river to drink and tend to their wounds. Brando watches Freya hand a bag to a young blonde boy named Dren. He thinks bitterly about the rotten state of the Aruan kingdom, which forces women and children into service. Dren smiles brightly at his captain, unaware of the grim fate Brando knows awaits them all. Brando exhales a weary breath, lamenting that he must live through this dark chapter of history again as a veteran player. He reflects on Freya's destiny, knowing that the legendary Valkyrie of Aruan is currently nothing more than an ordinary village girl. His expression hardens as he considers the tactical reality. Madara's forces are advancing quickly, and they need to escape the encirclement. Brando's resolve strengthens as he looks at Roma and Freya. He knows that saving even one more person is worth it for the kingdom's eventual revival. Freya holds the leather pouch close, her eyes reflecting the heavy burden of leadership she carries. Brando steps forward to address the group, telling them to relax while he discusses their situation. He stands tall despite his bandages, asking Freya about their current location and their planned route. She informs him they are near the Red Pine River and must head to the rear fortress. Freya looks at him with a mix of suspicion and intrigue, wondering why she feels compelled to answer this stranger whose presence is more commanding than her own captain's. Brando points toward the horizon, stating that if they intend to reach Reedon Fortress, they are taking the wrong path. He deduces that they chose the forest trail because the main highway was likely overrun with undead. Freya is taken aback, asking how he could possibly know that when he was supposed to be unconscious. Brando explains that it's a simple matter of military logic that any veteran would realize. He stands before the small band of survivors, his shadow stretching across the dirt as he asks if they truly grasp the severity of their situation. He explains that the enemy has intentionally blocked the main roads to cut off communications and clear the way for their main army. He reveals the grim reality. The undead plan to use Bucks as a hub to wipe out every remaining Eruin soldier in the region. Brando identifies the enemy commander as Sir Insteron, a man he knows will one day become one of Madara's greatest and most ruthless generals. He stares intensely, his thoughts revealing that in the original timeline, this situation was a death sentence from which only Freya escaped. He turns to the squad and poses the ultimate question: what do they plan to do now? Markme and his companion look at each other in grim silence, their earlier humor completely gone. Markme suggests breaking through the north to join Captain Marden. Brando visualizes the terrain, identifying the first escape route through Sharpstone Valley, but nodding it's too far to reach in time. He stares at the mental map, calculating their remaining options as the enemy encirclement tightens. He identifies the second route, south through Dagger Riverbank, where only a single corpse witch and her squad are stationed. He touches his chin, thinking that a breakout is entirely possible with proper coordination and the use of the Ring of the Wind Empress. A close-up shows Roma's trembling hands gripping Brando's arm for support. Roma asks with a tearful gaze if they are really going to die. Brando looks her in the eye and tells her firmly to trust him. Brando clears his throat and steps into the center of the group to offer his plan. Markme dismisses him, telling the wounded man to just go lie back down. Freya stops Markme with a sharp word, deciding that they should at least listen to what Brando has to propose. Brando outlines his plan to the squad, pointing out that Dagger Riverbank is their best chance for a breakthrough with only a small skeleton unit guarding it. Roma looks at him with wide, curious eyes, wondering aloud how he can possibly know such specific enemy movements without seeing them with his own eyes. Freya turns to Brando, her hands resting near her sword hilt as she asks if his strategy can truly ensure that every person in the group survives. Brando remains silent for a moment, his gaze fixed and focused as he mentally calculates the risks of the coming conflict. He tells the group that they must prepare for the worst while fighting for the best outcome, emphasizing that his lead is their only chance to reach Reedon Fortress. Suddenly, the rustling of leaves catches Freya's attention. She immediately drops into a defensive stance and draws her blade as she demands to know who's there. A man with disheveled brown hair and cracked armor stumbles out from the foliage, gasping for breath as he identifies himself to Captain Freya. Brando's expression shifts to one of alarm as he recognizes the newcomer as Josen, shouting a desperate warning to the group. A close-up shows a hand gripping a weapon hilt tightly, just as a blur of motion enters the scene. A sudden blast of red energy erupts, knocking Freya back and causing the ground to explode in a cloud of dust and debris. Brando quickly pulls Freya away from the danger, shouting for the unseen enemy to show themselves. A sinister laugh echoes through the trees, originating from the shadows where a skeletal face is beginning to emerge. A Madara necromancer, draped in tattered black robes and wielding a staff topped with a glowing red orb, looms over the cowering Josen. The rest of the squad watches in horror as Josen begs for forgiveness, admitting that he was captured and forced to lead the undead to their location. The Madara necromancer sneers at Josen's pleas, raising his staff as a surge of red magic pierces the traitor's chest. Josen's body crumples to the dirt as the necromancer warns the survivors not to make any sudden moves. The necromancer's single glowing red eye focuses on the group, his voice chilling as he prepares to deal with the little rats. Freya watches the scene unfold with a look of pure shock and horror, her hand covering her mouth as she processes the necromancer's cold-blooded cruelty. Brando leans in close to Freya, his voice steady as he warns her not to let the enemy's psychological tactics break her morale. Freya looks down, a single tear rolling down her cheek as the weight of the situation begins to take its toll on her. Freya's expression hardens again, though a trace of fear remains in her violet eyes as she looks toward the impending threat. Roma clings tightly to Brando's arm, her voice trembling as she admits how terrifying the skeletal soldiers are. Brando looks on, his jaw set in a grim line. A Madara skeleton soldier bellows a command, red energy burning in its empty eye sockets. It orders its fellow warriors to come forth and join the fray. The Madara necromancer stands among the trees, staff raised as he leads a mass of undead soldiers. The forest is filled with the skeletal legion, all moving in eerie unison toward their prey. A hand grips a sword hilt with sudden intensity, preparing for the inevitable clash. Freya shouts orders to her squad, her own blade drawn as they prepare for a stand. Markme and Dren stay close to the formation, bracing themselves as the enemy approaches. Markme firmly guides Dren toward the rear of the group, telling the young boy and any other children to stay out of the fight. Dren looks on, sword in hand, as the soldiers take their positions. The Madara necromancer laughs at the militia, calling them little rats destined to be food for his army. Skeletons with glowing red eyes crowd the space behind him, hissing as they surround the survivors. Intense blue light erupts from the ring of the Wind Empress on Brando's hand. Violent swirls of wind energy coil around his fingers, signaling that the artifact is fully powered. Brando stands at the center of a swirling vortex, his eyes glowing with a brilliant blue light. He declares that the charging is finally complete, ready to strike back against the Madara scum. Freya cuts through the first line, calling out the undead scum. Her militia squad tries their best to hold back the skeletal swarm. The knight lands a heavy blow, shattering a skeleton's ribs with one swing. Sweat drips down Freya's face. They've been at this all night and their strength is fatting fast. Little Dren swings his sword wildly, just trying to keep the monsters at bay. Brando watches the struggle, realizing these guys have heart but zero technique. He knows they can't win a war of attrition against an army that never gets tired. He shouts for everyone to stop swinging blindly and just keep their heads. The newbie killer, Lick, is the real threat here. One level 5 boss against a bunch of level 3 militia. Roma looks at him in shock, wondering when the quiet soldier became so dependable. The strategist points out the skeleton's weakness. They have a predictable lag after every strike. He calls for Makmi to draw their fire, while Issen moves in for the kill. A skeleton lunges forward, its rusted blade cutting through the air. Issen ducks under the strike, finding the opening exactly where Brando said it would be. Their blades clash with a shower of sparks. The two militia members coordinate their movements, finally creating a gap in the defense. Issen slams his sword down, crushing the skeleton's skull into dust. The pile of bones collapses, finally staying down for good. The soldier can barely believe it. He actually pulled it off. The militia erupts in cheers, calling Brando a straight-up genius for the tip. A notification pops up. It's not much experience, but it's a start for his new life. Deep in the trees, the Lick begins to chant, swirling red energy through the forest. Brando narrows his eyes. If they don't take out the boss now, nobody is getting out alive. The necromancer snarls, fixated on making the meddling soldier suffer. But then, the monster's gaze shifts to something else entirely. It spots the silver ring on his finger, a magnificent artifact it never expected to see here. Greed takes over as the Lick decides it has to have that ring for itself. It unleashes a jagged curse, ordering its minions to kill the wounded soldier first. A fresh wave of skeletons surges forward, their red eyes glowing with murderous intent. Roma panics as they're swarmed again, but Brando steps in front of her to hold them back. He's acting tough, but his status screen is flashing red. One scratch and it's game over. Freya sees the danger and screams for the others to cover him. Brando shouts back, telling little Vic to hold the line while the heavy hitters focus on the lick. The knight doesn't hesitate, charging headfirst into the fray. While the kids handle the small fry, he keeps his eyes fixed on the main target. He knows this lick only has two tricks, a concealment spell and a surprise curse. It's ancient dark magic, passed down through the lords of Madeira. The first spell hides their movements, making the undead army even harder to track. The second is a nasty rot that takes a long time to prepare. Brando yells out the secret. The magic isn't scary if you just interrupt the hand gestures. The lick's jaw practically drops. How could a lowly human know its secret casting patterns? Before it can finish the spell, a militiaman leaps through the air, ready to cut the shadow down. Issen swings his blade, trying to cut through a swirling orb of dark energy. He's blindsided by the speed of the attack, and someone screams for him to look left. Freya leaps into action, her sword glowing with amber light as she protects her allies. The source of the nightmare looms before them, a high-level lick wreathed in shadows. The monster screeches in confusion, wondering how a mere human is countering its magic. Brando stands amidst the bones of fallen skeletons, his voice cold as he tells the creature its time is up. Freya clashes her steel against the lick's staff, the force of the impact vibrating through her arms. She grits her teeth, feeling the massive gap in strength between this boss and its lackeys. A blast of necrotic energy slams into her, sending the knight tumbling back into the dirt. She screams for little Venice to get back, knowing the boy stands no chance against this monster. The pain is blinding. The wounds she took the night before are starting to rip open again. But the kid refuses to budge, clutching his sword and insisting he's a proud member of the militia too. Brando steps up and takes charge, barking orders to coordinate their desperate counterattack. He promises to get the job done, leading the charge as he and little Vic rush the shadow. Freya watches him with a mix of awe and worry, thinking he's absolutely out of his mind. But she doesn't back down, raising her blade to follow the strategist's lead. The whole group charges at once, aiming to overwhelm the lick before it can cast another spell. Freya pours every ounce of her remaining strength into a massive overhead slash. The blade connects, white-hot energy tearing through the creature's dark robes. The lick snarls in surprise, suddenly picking up a strange scent coming from Brando's body. It begins chanting a high-level curse, the air around it turning thick and oppressive. The monster is convinced that once the strategist is dead, the rest of the group will crumble. Suddenly, the creature vanishes into thin air, and Freya warns everyone to stay on high alert. Brando realizes he's dealing with a shadow surprise attack. He's completely underestimated the beast's speed. The lick reappears right behind him, its bony hand reaching out to deliver a killing blow. But he's faster, spinning in a blur and unleashing a concentrated blue energy slash. The lick is stunned, wondering if this human could actually be from the legendary silver lineage. Brando doesn't give it a chance to finish the thought, decapitating the shadow form with a single, clean strike. Far away from the battlefield, the leadership of the Madeira vanguard gathers for a crisis meeting. Vampire Baron Tagus Manline is absolutely livid that the invasion was launched ahead of schedule. Necromancer Roscoe stands before his commander, trembling as he prepares to explain his failure. The Baron's gaze is cold enough to freeze blood, and Roscoe looks like he's about to faint. He stammers through his report, explaining how an unexpected human scout messed up their timing. When asked for results, he has to admit the scout got away, even though the village was hit. Cabais, the skeletal officer, doesn't hide his disgust, berating Roscoe for letting the human slip through his fingers. The Baron shuts them both up with a single look, demanding absolute silence for the briefing. Cabais stands tall, his glowing red eyes fixed on the map of the region they're about to destroy. Baron Tagus is done with excuses. It's time to get this conquest back on track. He stabs his finger at the map, ordering cabis to level the village before the sun even comes up. The rest of the officers receive their orders to purge the surrounding lands, and the room echoes with their agreement. The Baron demands perfection and elegance from his nobles as they execute his every command. The entire Council of Darkness salutes, their voices booming with a fanatical shout for the glory of Madeira. A thin, watery soup bubbles over a small campfire, the only meal the survivors have left. Dren stirs the pot with a look of pure disappointment. It's blander than dishwater, but they have to make it last. While the others fret over the meal, Brando quietly spends his experience points to learn battlefield first aid, healing his broken body in a flash of green light. Freya pulls Issen aside, her voice tight with worry as she discusses their dwindling rations and the desperate need to reach a safe haven. Brando steps into the conversation, casually suggesting they simply hit the local villages to resupply their stocks. Issen shakes his head in disbelief, reminding him that Madeira's undead hordes have turned every nearby settlement into a death trap. Brando ignores the pessimism and asks a simple question: who has a map of the surrounding territory? Freya and Issen exchange a blank look. Such things are rare luxuries reserved only for the highest military commanders. Brando realizes with a start that in this world, carrying an unauthorized map is practically a death sentence for a commoner or a spy. He doesn't let the lack of paper stop him, asking Roma to fetch him a sword so he can improvise. The sharp tip of the blade bites into the dry earth, dragging through the dirt with a determined screech. Under the watchful, confused eyes of the militia, Brando begins to sketch a complex tactical map right there in the dust. He thinks bitterly about the noble academies that fail to teach basic strategy, leaving their soldiers defenseless against a coordinated invasion. Using the ground as his canvas, he points out their position relative to Buck's, Qing village, and their ultimate destination, Riedenburg. Freya stares at the dirt as if it's a miracle, wondering how a simple militiaman could possess the knowledge of a seasoned general. Roma lets out a joyful cry when she sees the path to Riedenburg, her eyes lighting up at the thought of finally reaching safety. The tension breaks for a moment as some of the men start to chuckle, catching Freya off guard. Dren gleefully recounts a childhood story of Roma getting hopelessly lost on her way to do business, leaving the girl red-faced and protesting. Brando cuts through the laughter, identifying Qing village as their best bet for finding food and supplies. Freya's expression sours immediately. She knows that under the current offensive, Qing village is almost certainly a graveyard. Brando argues that the undead only care about slaughtering the living, meaning the granaries should still be full of untouched rations. Dren is instantly on board, his eyes wide with excitement at the prospect of a secret infiltration mission. Brando begins assigning roles, ordering Issen and Freya to accompany him while the rest of the group guards the camp. Freya immediately puts her foot down, crossing her arms and insisting that Brando is in no condition to leave. Brando stares her down, asking point-blank if she's trying to bench him just because of his recent injuries. The knight's resolve wavers slightly as she looks at his bandaged chest, her face softening with a hint of guilt. Brando presses his advantage, pointing out that none of them actually know how to lead a reconnaissance or infiltration team. Deep down, his motivation is more than just food. He knows a legendary, beginner's divine artifact is hidden somewhere in that village. Freya remains stubborn, telling him to just explain the plan and let the able-bodied soldiers handle the heavy lifting. In a bold move, Brando reaches for his sword, his fingers tightening around the hilt as he makes a decision. He challenges Freya to a duel, proposing that an ancient and traditional test of strength decide who's fit for the mission. The campfire area goes silent as Dren and Issen gape at him, certain that Brando has finally lost his mind. Freya narrows her eyes, her hand moving to her own blade as she asks him if he's actually serious about this joke. Brando stands his ground, drawing his steel and telling her to come at him with everything she's got. With a sharp "you asked for it," Freya unsheathes her heavy broadsword and assumes a combat stance. She swings with terrifying force, her blade trailing a streak of blue light as she tries to end the match in a single blow. Brando moves with a fluidity that shocks her, his body twisting through the air as he narrowly avoids the crushing strike. He can feel the raw power behind her swings vibrating through the air, and he realizes he'll have to use every trick in his arsenal. As Freya resets for another attack, Brando executes a perfect Kato reverse cut, his blade whipping around in a counterintuitive arc. The knight's eyes go wide with shock as the tip of his sword finds a gap in her defense she didn't even know existed. Brando halts his blade inches from her, the duel ending before it truly began, and asks her if she's ready to admit defeat. He allows himself a small, private smirk, remembering the mercenary in the game who taught him this technique for a few barrels of wine. Brando grits his teeth, realizing his current body is far too frail to fully execute the Kato reverse cut and disarm her properly. Freya, her pride wounded, refuses to yield and declares she won't be holding anything back for the next exchange. Their swords collide with a jarring metallic ring, sparks flying as neither side wants to give an inch of ground. The duel intensifies, with Freya relying on her raw knightly power, while Brando uses every scrap of his veteran game knowledge to stay ahead. Suddenly, the look in Brando's eyes changes, and Freya realizes with a surge of panic that she's walked right into a trap. In a blur of motion too fast for her to follow, Brando's blade flashes upward, cutting through her guard like it wasn't even there. The forest goes silent as Brando holds his sword steady at Freya's throat, calmly nodding that he's surely proven his point by now. Roma, Issen, and Dren can only stare in mute shock. They can't believe their strongest warrior was just bested by a wounded militiaman. Brando playfully turns his gaze toward little Dren, asking who's next, but the terrified boy quickly waves him off. Having regained her composure, Freya takes charge and announces that Brando and Issen will accompany her to Qing village for supplies. The rest of the squad shouts their agreement, their morale bolstered by the unexpected display of leadership and skill. With their objective clear, the small scouting party sets off into the dense woods, leaving the safety of the campfire behind. Brando walks in silence, his mind already racing ahead to the potential rewards waiting for them in the village. He recalls a specific hidden quest from the game, picturing the legendary sword that should still be sealed away in a forgotten tomb nearby.